everyone, Miko here with Behavior Analyst Supervisor. Thank you for joining us for our free Wednesday Zoom calls. Here you're watching on YouTube, but you could also join us on Wednesday. If you're interested in the link to these calls to join live, feel free to send us an email at info@behavioranalystsupervisor.com. You can also just check out our Instagram. We post questions every single day on Instagram. We also post the link to our free Zoom calls. Every Wednesday, we go through a different task list item area, such as A1. We'll talk a little bit about that task list item, and then we'll go through 3 mock exam questions relating to that task list area. We hope that this provides an opportunity for you to learn a little bit more about the task list and also dive deep into question dissection. We here at Behavior Analyst Supervisor really focus on providing explanations on why an answer is correct and why it's also incorrect. So we appreciate that you joined us. If you have any questions throughout the duration of this video, feel free to shoot us an email, hit that like and subscribe button for more information. Also, you can always leave a comment and we'll be sure to reach back out to you. Thanks again, and I'm Miko with Behavior Analyst Supervisor. You'll also be hearing from Amy and Kevin. Talk to you soon. Hi everyone, welcome to another installment of our free Wednesday Zooms. Thanks everyone for joining us. We appreciate y'all being here. We are going to go ahead and without further ado, go ahead and get started. So my name is Miko. If I haven't met y'all, it is so good to meet you. Most of you I recognize, so I'm sure I've met all of y'all. Anyways, let's do it. I'm gonna turn my video off as always because we post these on YouTube and my face gets on there for some reason. So let me turn my video off and we'll begin. A couple of quick announcements. We do have a Breakdown the Beast coming up this Saturday. So if you are interested in joining us for that, feel free to jump in and join us. If you're a part of our All You Need Guaranteed, that's included in your course. If you are not, just send me an email and I will get you set up with that. Other than that, today we are talking about F-2, determine the need for behavior analytic services. So this is section F. Section F is typically about FAs and conducting different types of assessments, preference assessments, analog assessments, which is an FA, descriptive assessments, ABC narrative, ABC scatter plot, and all of that stuff. It also has to do with reviewing records and kind of moving forward from there. So first and foremost, the initial part of section F is really determining the need for services, and we do that in a couple of different ways. First off, social validity is gigantic. If anything, this section relates the most to social validity than anything else within kind of the task list. And so when we're analyzing scenario questions, a couple of things that I really want you to look for and to look at. First is the age of the client. If the age of the client is listed in the scenario, it's usually important. And even if it's not, it's something you should pay attention to. The reason it's usually important is because the age of the client leads to what goals are age appropriate or socially significant. So that's one thing you'll want to look for. You also want to look for the current skills of the client. So you want to sift through that scenario question and determine what the client's current skills are and understand what skills they have and what deficits they also have. That allows us to determine what needs to be worked on. That allows us to pick goals that can help bridge deficits or improve the lives of the client and others around them, hence social significance. So really, that's what this is all about. It's not crazy difficult, but this requires a real filter when we're sorting through questions. So we're going to go through a couple questions, and then we should have plenty of time for you all to ask questions as well at the end. Like I said, this one isn't super big or super long, so let's go ahead and get started. Our first question, Mary is a 6-month-old child that has been diagnosed with ASD. Her caregivers have contracted you to help encourage potty training. Which of the following should you do? A, refuse services. B, review records. C, consult with the medical provider. Or D, develop an intervention plan. Go ahead and put your answers in the chat. If you're watching this after the fact on YouTube, I would love for you to put your answers in the comment, and then obviously I will explain in just a second. Awesome. So we have a few messages in the chat. If you haven't put one, I would encourage you to, just so that way you are having a chance to respond. It's for some accountability there. This one is a little bit difficult. So the first thing, remember, if you see the age of the client, that's usually important. This is a 6-month-old client. And then what skill are we going to work on? Well, we are going to work on potty training. Do 6-month-olds typically become potty trained? Well, no, they don't. 6-month-olds, that's hard for me to say for some reason, would not be potty trained. They're still infants. They're still in diapers. Potty training is not something we would begin to work on because they don't have those needed prerequisite skills. So honestly, as harsh as it might sound, you are going to refuse services. And obviously, I'm not going to say, hey, I'm refusing you services. What I'm going to say is, your child is 6 months old. We need to work on some of the prerequisite skills before we work on potty training with your client. And so I would tell them that it is not socially significant for us to work on this skill, and we would move on from there. Review records. We always review records at the onset of the case. However, I will say, when you're doing the initial consult, like the pre-screening, when you get the referral, you would know that this is not an age-appropriate skill, so there's no need to go further. Confidentiality of our clients is extremely important. If the behavior is not socially significant, there would be no reasons for us to review records. There's no reason to move on from here. That's why A is better than B. C, consult with the medical provider. Again, this is an age-appropriate, this is not an age-appropriate skill. Also, it is appropriate for a 6-month-old not to be potty trained, so there's nothing to consult a medical provider about. And then lastly, develop an intervention plan. Well, we wouldn't do that, especially since we're not doing the other things. Developing the intervention plan is like the last thing that we do. But again, if the behavior is not socially significant, we certainly do not want to develop an intervention plan. So we move on from there. The answer to this was A, refuse services, because it does not meet our social validity requirements. Next, Walter, a 22-year-old male client diagnosed with ASD. You have worked with him to find a job placement at Target as a cashier. After the first day, he says he no longer wants to be a cashier and would like to work as a pizza maker. How should you proceed? Consult with his caregivers on the new goal. Adapt the training to make Target fit some of what he wants to do. Explain the relevance that Target has on typical living situations. Find a pizza placement. All right, we had a few answers come in the chat. It looks like we like D, and it looks like we like B, and it looks like we have a couple of people that like A too. So a little bit of everything. Well, let's go ahead and talk through it. First thing, again, remember anything in the task list, but especially section F, and we know we're working on section F here, but if you see the age of the client, that is something you want to hone in on. It's important when you're dissecting questions to start picking out the important pieces of information. Age of the client definitely is an important piece of information. Why? Well, that allows us to rule out A, consult with his caregivers on the new goal. Nothing in this scenario tells me that Walter has caregivers. This is actually directly opposite because he's 22 years old, meaning that we should assume, unless the question tells us otherwise, that Walter is his own caregiver. He is autonomous. He's an adult. He can make his own decisions. Nothing in here tells me that he has a caregiver or he is incapable of making his own decisions. And so our default for anyone over 18 is that they are independent. And that's how we should be thinking when we're approached by questions on the test. The next thing here, he wanted to find, or we found him, we worked hard, we worked with him to find a job placement at Target. He now no longer wants to work there. Should we adapt the training to make Target fit some of what he wants to do? This would be really good if being a pizza maker and working at Target had anything in common. Maybe if this was a Target that had a Pizza Hut in it, if you haven't seen those, y'all, I have, but Pizza Hut is still separate. So it doesn't really fit making pizza and working at Target. That would be really difficult to make those fit. What would be easier and what would be more parsimonious would be D, find a pizza placement. Clients have autonomy. They are able to make decisions for themselves. They can come to us and they can ask us to obviously consult with us to help them reach their skill acquisition or behavior deficit goals, or reduce problem behaviors or increase replacement behaviors, and all of those things. When we start working with adults, it's a lot of job placement and everyday living situations and things of that nature. If a client says that they don't like a placement that you have helped set up, we have to respect that, and we should help them find an alternative placement. No matter how hard we work, ultimately the client is number one. So find a pizza placement is best. Now, I will say, if you've gone through like multiple placements and every time your client gets to one, they're like, I don't like this, I want to go to a new place, that might be grounds for considering discontinuing services. If you can't find an effective placement, you need to address the barriers. Why are they quitting consistently? Is there something about the job? Is it escape maintain behavior? And really understand why they're quitting, and then kind of go from there. But if this is the first time it's happened, they just don't like working at Target, you've worked with them, and then they want to switch, go ahead and switch them. Most parsimonious is D. We don't need to explain the relevance that Target has on typical living situations, because any job will help us to adapt to the more normative environment, as we call it, not just Target, even though that's where a majority of my bank account goes. All right, next. Which of the following is the most important to the selection of intervention goals? Is it internal validity, external validity, the relevance of behavior rule, or strategies for generalization? I'm going to say it right now because I know people are thinking it, people will comment this. Most important means all of these could be important. It means every one of these answers could be correct, but there is one, obviously it says it, there's one most important. One of these is more important than the others. One of them you do before the others. A trick I use when I get a question that I can't determine what I should pick, or I get down to two answers, is I'll ask myself, does one of these come before the others? Is the first question I ask. The second question I ask is, does one of these depend on the others? And those are really just two variations of the same question. But I would encourage you to ask yourself that. Does one of these things come before the rest? And I think the answer to that is yes, and I'll explain in about 10 seconds. All right, so we have a pretty even split between C and D in the chat, which is, it's pretty typical to have a split between these two, as these are probably the best two answers. Internal validity means you have a functional relation between the independent variable and the dependent variable. That is important, but again, there's other things you need to consider before you even worry about finding a functional relation. External validity is when you have you've replicated an intervention. So you've taken it with one individual and moved it with multiple individuals, or with one behavior, moved it with multiple behaviors, or one setting, multiple settings. It's akin to generalization, but a little bit different, as it's more focused on like the scientific replication. So that's not the answer here. There's something more important than that. C and D. Generalization obviously is critical. We want to make sure that we are trying to generalize anything that we do. Generalization is key. How do things generalize? Well, they generalize because they contact reinforcement. C is the answer here. So C is our best answer. The reason C is better than D is because the relevance of behavior rule tells us that we only select goals to work on that are going to contact reinforcement in the natural environment. Meaning we only select goals to work on that are going to generalize. Before we can work on strategies for generalization, we need to know that that goal is going to generalize. The relevance of behavior rule is one of the most critical things that we learn at the very beginning. So I think it's in chapter 1 of the Cooper book, or 2, but I'm pretty sure it's in chapter 1, right near the social validity section. And it talks about how the relevance of behavior rule, like I just stated, says we only work on goals that contact reinforcement. For example, and I use this example on one of our Tuesday, Thursday calls, but I know that the World Cup is happening and we're like in the quarterfinals or the finals at this point, but I don't really follow soccer and it's not something that I find the most joy out of watching. I don't know. I just can't follow the sport. I don't know it a whole lot. So when I have children, teaching them to watch soccer probably isn't going to contact a whole lot of reinforcement in my household. So it wouldn't be something that we would really encourage necessarily. Sure, when I have kids, if they love soccer, then great, they can do that. But it wouldn't be something that I would have like a BCBA or an outside soccer coach come in and be like, teach my kids soccer. But I love football. I played college football. I watch football all the time. Football is my favorite sport. And so football is something that would contact reinforcement in my house. If your family is a puzzle family and you love to do puzzles or board games, that would contact reinforcement. So you always want to be thinking about what types of things are going to contact reinforcement, because reinforcement leads to behaviors continuing, which leads to behaviors generalizing. So that's the key, and that's what we want to talk about. I'm going to go to our last slide, and because we haven't done it in a while, I'm going to take us to our website. Just want you to see basically the calendar and a couple of other cool things, but we have our calendar here, so we talk about what we're going to go through. We will have this next week and the week after, so even though it's the holidays, we will still do these Wednesday Zooms. I will say though, we'll have it. Oh yeah, we'll have them through, so we'll be good to go. Next week we're talking about. Let's see, what is it? Define and provide examples of motivating operations. So we're talking all about MOs. That'll be a fun one. We also have individual items and packages that you can look at on your own time. I do want to say we have 3 full-length mock exams now, so that's cool. We have packages with them, but you all can check that out on your own time. For now, I want to go ahead and open it up to any questions that you might have. I'll turn my camera back on. If you have questions, you can go ahead and throw it in the chat. While you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and throw your names into the wheel of names and then go from there. So you can also unmute yourself if you have a question, no worries. No questions? Wow. We had, it was so exciting today. We had a multiple time test taker pass. She jumped on here for a second and then she left, but she took the test a few times and had been working with us and she just passed today. So that's exciting. It's Heather, if you guys were wondering. She was here and now she's not here. So she passed today, which was super cool. Okay, spin the wheel, have everyone's name in. Thank you all for coming. We have these every week. Feel free to share it with your friends. We're posting 2 questions a day on Instagram, so I'm about to post the second question pretty soon here. Feel free to check it out. And yeah, that's that. And our winner is Miss Allie. Miss Allie, you are our winner. So thanks for hopping on. I know you have an account. So tomorrow morning, Allie, I will put a free mini mock in your account. It'll be under tests. So it won't be under packages. It'll be under tests. I'll throw it in your account either right now before I jump off or tomorrow morning. So I'll probably do it right now. So just go ahead and check your account in about 15 minutes. Other than that, there is a question, the difference between progressive reinforcement and progressive. So progressive ratio is it's a reinforcer assessment. And what you do is you progressively increase the the response requirement until the individual no longer responds. And what I mean by that is you start by saying, okay, you want to work for $1, clap your hands 1 time. They clap their hands once. All right, for this $1, now you got to clap your hands twice and then get the $1. And you do that until they no longer respond. So if I say clap your hands 30 times and you don't do it anymore, then I know the power of $1 is only up to 29 claps. So that's what a progressive ratio is. Allie, I just put that in your account. I'm a great multitasker. So I answered that question and I put that in your account at the same time. Magical. Again, it's under test, so just check under test. Cool. What other questions, y'all?
Hi, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Okay. So I was wondering if I can read a mock question to you. And And because the answer I picked was not right, and I don't understand why.
You sure can. You're echoing a little bit. I think you're in twice.
Yeah, so I don't know how to let me.
Hold on, I'll kick your old one out.
Okay.
Okay, cool. You should be good now.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Yep, you're so welcome.
Can I read it out loud real quick?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a bit long.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, it says, Jacob is an 18-year-old client who is non-vocal and lives in a group home. Jacob struggles with taking a shower independently. The BCBA decided that they are going to implement a DRO for an intervention for the showering behavior. There are rotating staff at the group home. After a couple of sessions, the BCBA discovers that the intervention is not working. In regards to evaluating up-to-date preferences for the client, what would have been best for the BCBA to do? Is it A, consult with the client? Is it B, consult with the group home staff? Is it C, consult with the client's parents? Or is it D, consult with other BCBAs who have experience working in a group home setting?
Cool. And what did you pick?
I picked A, consult with the client.
Cool. And the answer to this one is what?
Consult with the group home staff.
Okay, cool. So this is where things become a little bit tricky. Typically, so first off, I would want to see just a little bit more in that question, to be honest, but I think there's enough to answer it. I would probably pick consult with the client and the group home staff, because even though if you live in a group home, typically the group home has autonomy over you. So if the scenario says group home or caregivers in it, that typically means that you are the group home, or the caregiver has the power of attorney over you, is like the legal term. It just means that they're responsible for your decision-making process. However, our ethical code and what we're taught still tells us that we should ensure that we are incorporating the client whenever possible. So I think that the best answer would be Jacob and the group home. The ultimate say, though, does come to the group home, and so that's why that is the better choice. Not being black and white, being in real life, and like when you go out and pass your test, you always should incorporate the client into it. Even when I work with like 3-year-olds, I worked in early intervention and have primarily only worked in early intervention. I would still ask the clients like, okay, do we want to work on colors or do we want to work on numbers? And so we're still incorporating the client into services. Ultimately, though, right, the caregivers are going to sign off on what skills that we actually work on. And so that's why the group home is the best choice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand that, but it asks for like up-to-date preferences. So even though he's non-vocal, isn't there a way to like determine like preference assessment, right? Like determine like what they want.
Totally. You can still conduct preference assessments with the client. You have to get approval first before you conduct the preference assessment. Just like anything, you have to get approval before you can implement it. But even though he's non-vocal, you can still do any of the types of preference assessments. It's just getting approval before you do that is the key.
Okay.
Yep. Cool. That's a good question. Yeah. Sweet. Any other questions, y'all? Great. If you ever do have questions, you can always email us. I'm happy to jump on a call with anyone about literally anything. So if you have questions, email it to us.